What's up, Toyotaholics? Welcome back to another suspension video. We have Hugo joining us again today. So in the last video, we talked about entry-level suspension. Today, we have this layout here. This is going to be all mid-travel suspension.
Mid-travel setups.
So an upgrade to all of the ones we talked about in the previous video. So let's get into it.
Hey guys, how you doing today? This is Hugo from R4T. So what we'll be talking today, it's pretty much, different setups for different types of driving manners, different budgets, different weights on vehicle, and pretty much different styles of off-roading where it comes to the end. Let's start with the most affordable 2.5-inch diameter shock body. So we're going to start with a 6112, the good old trusty Bilstein 6112. What we have here is very simple, old school technology, just a 2.5-inch diameter shock body for more fluid capacity. This shock is valve and tune a little bit on the aggressive side, okay? 250 psi internally. These shocks do enjoy going fast on a washboard or dirt roads and stuff of that nature. Now, the cool thing about these shocks, besides the price point, is that you can select different spring rates, and Bilstein should have them available. You're gonna find the spring rates from 600, 650, and 700 pounds, depending on how much weight you added on the front end of your vehicle. You have some kind of adjustability. This is a new part number Bilstein. We always here running for tacos, we make sure we give you the brand new part numbers on everything. So the new part number has now 9 circlip settings. Previously you only had 4. So even if you add a bumper and you need a slightly more lift, you can disassemble the coilover, move the circlip setting up a notch or 2, depending on how high you wanna get, and assemble it, and you're back on the road in no time. But make sure you do an alignment afterwards, okay? Yeah, so this will be more on the affordable side. A lot of strength, 2.5-inch diameter shock body.
So for this 6112
Yes.
setup here, when you are just buying it, let's say you are purchasing this for a Tacoma off of R4T's website, what spring rate does it come with, or do you get to choose?
We actually start at 650.
So
at 650.
out of the box, 650 pound spring,
Correct.
right?
That is correct. Yep. Yes, sir. Because we understand our customers. They're going to add skid plates or slimline bumper or something like that. So we always want to keep the customers ready for their next plans. Okay.
So out of the box, 650.
Correct.
And then if you wanted higher spring rates, you can change out the spring here.
That is correct. All depending on the weight and how much adjustments you have over here. We gotta be really careful with that because you don't really want to over adjust, but you also don't wanna end up with a softer spring or a super stiff spring. We need to find you that happy medium pretty much. Next, we have Dobinsons from Australia. Okay, also a 2.5-inch diameter shock body. These became really popular in the last couple years on Lexus, Tacomas, 4Runners, FJ Cruisers. The reason why is because they offer so many options. You have almost endless options. Just with their adjusters, they have 3 types of adjustability. This small knob is your lowest speed. This is for somebody that wants to go rock rolling and wants a firmer shock and stuff of that nature. And this big purple knob will be more for your highest speed. If you want to go play on the sand dunes, do some high speed on washboards or stuff of that nature. Also, these adjusters, they come in handy so much, especially if your vehicle has a lot of weight, like some Tacomas with a bed rack, a rooftop tent, a deck system, or stuff like that. You can feel free to play with these adjustments until you find the proper right quality for your specific needs. This is one of the things we get a lot of phone calls, like, where do you recommend me to set the shocks? We don't know. That's something that we tell the customer, go ahead and adjust them on the softer side or go ahead and adjust them on the stiffer side. Drive the truck every day and every day do one adjustment until you guys find the proper tune for your specific needs. The third adjustment, it's kind of funny and interesting because this is for the rebound. You have a little screw on top where you can adjust the rebound. So this will be your low and high speed, and this will be your rebound. That's why they're called 3 adjustment MRR. So 2.5-inch diameter shock body. Now, like I mentioned, Bilstein is using a digressive valving system. Dobinsons likes to use linear. Also, the internal PSI on these, it's about 140 to 160 pounds of pressure internally. Spring-wise, on your coilover, pretty much you can dress it any way you want, depending on how much weight you have on the front. They really have tons of options with the spring rate, and also they are right height adjustable. You know, you put the spring perch and adjust, and that way you can adjust them accordingly for your specific needs. Same for the rear shocks. You're gonna have your adjustments on the remote reservoir. Okay,
so these MRRs, I see the only difference from all these other ones, these are all dual adjustment or has compression adjustments. This Dobinson has a 3-way adjustment. So that rebound adjustment, is it something that's necessary? How come these other ones don't have the rebound adjustment?
You know, that's a really good question. It seems that Dobinsons wanted to walk the extra mile, you know, and offer the customers an extra type of adjustability, because, you know, they were smart. They look at all of these brands and they technically only have compression adjustment. Okay, but Dobinsons wanted to do extra work, and now they adjusted the rebound, you know. So you usually see that on secondary bypass shocks, or mostly on race shocks, you know, when you have compression, rebound, and all that stuff. So this is a fantastic setup because you can actually adjust it and fine-tune it specifically for your needs. So very interesting.
So just adding to what you said here, with all the phone calls we get about where do I set my compression and stuff, the reason why we can't give you an answer for that is because every truck that comes in here is literally a different weight. Some have rooftop tents, some don't. Some have 35s, some has 32s, some has a full skid plate, some doesn't. So, and that's just why we can't tell you, set it at this, because all the weight's gonna be different. So it's something that you have to play with yourself.
Exactly.
All right, moving on.
Different driving manners too.
Oh yeah.
You know, do you like to go fast? I don't.
Right. And you know, if you live in a place where it's like a lot of dirt road to get to your house, whereas, you know, most people here in Colorado, it's all just street driving to get to your house. So it's really up to you on how you utilize your truck.
That's right. That's right.
All right, so after the Dobinson setup here, we have the Icon. So let's talk about these.
Correct, yeah. Icon also has been around for a very long time. These are really good looking coilovers, and they have several stages from stage 1 all the way up to stage Let's Get Crazy. Here what we have, it's a coilover 2.5-inch diameter shock body, valve and tune more on the aggressive side. But the cool thing about this is, like, you have 10 compression adjustments over here. So these will control pretty much the compression depending on your ride quality preference or what kind of terrain you are traveling. You have the slow compression, and after 10 clicks you will find the H, which is high compression. So yeah, pretty much depending on what situations you're traveling, what kind of performance you're looking for, what kind of ride quality you're looking for, you can adjust accordingly to your specific needs. And also, same as the other brands, you can choose different spring rates. Just gotta make sure, I always recommend, make sure you get a 14-inch long spring, 3 inches on diameter, inner diameter, because you're playing with a 2.5-inch diameter shock body. And either you can contact the manufacturer to purchase a spring directly, or you can always contact us and we can get you the right spring for your specific needs. And also this will affect your preload, which in most cases, the less preload that you have, the better ride quality and better shock travel you'll gain. So yeah, and these are extended travel as well. So,
and I believe these are the top of the line setup you can get from Icon.
Yeah, one of them, because they have the electronic shocks as well.
Electronic shocks. So this is, as far as like mid-travel shock, this is the highest level shock you can get from Icon.
That is correct.
And then the electronic model.
That is correct.
But everything else is pretty similar to our King and Fox over here. It's probably really similar to this Fox setup. All the colors are the same. Top hat looks very similar, and even the bottom shaft here looks fairly similar. But all these mid-tier or all these mid-travel shocks here do pretty much the same thing, and load range and travel is about in the same specs.
That is correct, yeah. Some of them, like Bilstein and Icon, will be the two brands that are using a digressive valve system. Dobinsons, King, and Fox will use more linear type of valving, but also internal PSI. It's almost the same. This one also uses 250 PSI internally. So yeah, very similar.
That is pretty much it for this Icon setup here. So let's move on to the, I would say, very popular, very iconic, the one and only King setup, the electric blue.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
So King, like Tuan said, you know, King is a legend on the off-roading overland aspect. So King, I like King a lot because number one, reliability. The name is there. Adjustability on these, they only come with compression adjustments. But the good thing about King actually that they're willing to take a challenge. If a customer actually requests certain length shocks, or they want to go long travel, or whatever custom items they need suspension wise, King is more than willing to help you guys out as long as you give them specs. They like to take that challenge. Actually, it's kind of cool of them, but you have to wait a little longer because these guys are always super busy. Now King, they like to use a linear valve shock system, which actually it's almost the same as Dobinsons, but these you can see trophy trucks or race trucks, they're running either King or Fox, because this valving it's perfect for higher speed stuff. You always are under control of the vehicle. They do offer adjustments, which you will have a knob over here, but King only offers compression adjustment. The reason why they only offer compression adjustment is because the way they tune their shocks, if I'm not mistaken, they use 6 shims on the rebound and 4 on the compression. So that's why they only give you the compression adjustability, so you can play with it a little bit. And pretty much the same concept as Dobinsons, depending on how much weight you're carrying or what kind of terrain you're traveling. You know, if you are rock rolling, you might like a firmer shock or a softer shock, or like me, I like my ride quality more on the softer side, so my shocks are all the way on the softer on the front. I think I have them on medium on the rear end because my rear end weighs 700 pounds. Once I go off-roading, that's when I do the fine-tuning that I need. Same with King, spring rate on Icons. King starts 600-pound spring rate, 14 inches long. Adjustability. Now the new Kings, if you got them, what, like 3-4 months ago? Recently, when they start changing, 3 months. Now 0 preload means 2 inches of lift, okay? And then you do minor adjustments. But the same pretty much explanation, spring rate is key for depending on how much weight you're gonna be carrying, all right? All of these shocks are rebuildable, fully rebuildable. Also, since we are now touching race shocks territory, this is very important. Don't skip on the upper control arms because these shocks out of the box are extended travel. If you want the full experience and you want to bring your vehicle back to factory geometries or as close as possible, get upper control arms. And we're gonna do a video about upper control arms in the hopefully very soon to explain the difference between upper control arms, because all of these suspensions are built and designed to serve different purposes, okay? So now we go with Fox. Oh, and by the way, King also offers several spring rates as well, depending on the weight you are carrying.
So from what I know, just because we have stacks and stacks of Kings, out of the box, it's pretty much what you order. You can do 550, 600, 650, 700. And pretty much you want to base off of your truck's weight.
That is correct.
Front, rear steel bumpers, you know, all the good stuff, and then you would pick the spring rate from there.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
So you were talking about rebuilding shocks.
Yes.
Why and when do you know you need to rebuild them?
So usually all these companies, they have a schedule for their shocks. They usually say, hey, between 50, 60,000 miles, you need to rebuild my shocks. But that's on conservative driving manners, you know. I know people, personal friends that are rebuilding Kings every 500 miles because they like to have extra fun. I also know people that they have 70,000 miles in their suspension and they still are running like brand new. When it comes to rebuilding, it all depends on you. You know, we also get that phone call a lot, like how often do I need to rebuild my shocks? We don't know. There is not an exact answer unless if you really want to follow the manufacturer's schedule, there is your answer. But mostly it's your driving manners, the ones that dictate when the shock is the shocks will let you know when it's time to rebuild. Now, the fun part about rebuilding shocks is that once the shock is open, make sure you bring it to an authorized rebuilder. You can play with the shims, you can play with the valving, with the internal pressure. You can talk to the guy, to the technician, and tell him, hey, you know what? I want softer rebound, or I want a stiffer rebound, softer compression, yada yada, you know, and they can actually custom valve them as well for you. So, you know, from 250 psi, you can drop them down to 160 depending on your specific needs. So, yeah, so pretty much I usually recommend let the shock do its work, and the shock is the one going to let you know when it's time to get rebuilt.
So when you say the shock will let you know, you're talking about like noises, you're talking about like leaks, you're talking about it not rebounding properly anymore?
All of the above. Yeah, okay. All of the above. It might be just a loud thunking sound, might be just a hand bearing joint, shock starts leaking, might be just the seal needs to be replaced, and while you're at it, just replace the fluid and repressurize it. Yeah, many stuff it can be done to the shock. So it all depends. It's cool. Like I always tell, it's like an open heart surgery. You don't know what's inside until you open it. So,
all right.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to our last setup here, and we're talking about iconic. You know, you see all the race builds out there, you know, all you see is Kings and Fox. So correct. These guys kind of go head to head here. So
that is right. King and Fox use the same valving system, which is linear. Both of them use about 250 psi internally. Here is one thing about Fox though. They have so many part numbers on Fox, different applications. They like to use a 13-inch long spring, because once we start talking about race shocks, they focus more on performance and ride quality. So they want you to have a 13-inch long spring, and these ones start at 600-pound spring rate as well. But if you decide to add a bumper, a winch, and stuff like that, once again, you can actually get a 14-inch long spring, 650 or 700-pound spring rate to minimize the preload. Like I was mentioning with the Icons, some customers have the preload all the way down here because they're not aware that you can actually change the springs on these to minimize the preload and increase the performance on the shock. Now, another cool thing about increasing the spring rate, when you add weight, you minimize that nosedive and body roll of the vehicle. Oh. So yeah, so it's very important also to take a look at it, and you can always contact your local off-road shop. You can feel free to call us anytime, and we can definitely guide you the right way. Now, yeah, this the advantage that Fox has over King, check this out. I brought a rear shock because Fox actually has dual adjustability as well. They have a high speed and low speed adjusters.
Pretty similar to our MRR here?
That is correct. Yeah, if you find yourself on the sand dunes on a Friday night and you want to go fast, play with a blue knob. This is your highest speed. And you find yourself in Moab the next day and you want to go rock rolling and you want to firm up the shock, it's totally up to you. You can play with a smaller knob to firm up the shock. Now, which brings me to my next point on these shocks, remote reservoirs.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of customers are on the they have the idea that the remote reservoir actually is full of fluid. It's not. It's not the case. So technically speaking, you have about 30% fluid over here and 70% nitrogen over here, and it's divided by an IFP or internal floating piston. The reason why is because this shock, it's full of fluid. The reservoir allows to keep more fluid inside of the shock. So when there is big stroke on the shock, you know, that fluid needs to go somewhere. So it travels through the reservoir. This floating piston starts moving up and down depending on how much pressure you need or it gets. Nitrogen sort of cools it off, and then it forces it back to the shock. Okay, so that way you don't experience shock fatigue or shock cavitation. Okay, I usually start recommending remote reservoirs when your vehicle is super heavy, because like I say, you know, super heavy trucks, if you hit a pothole, you're gonna hit it 10 times higher than the guy that doesn't have any weight. This valving over here, the internal floating piston, is the one that it's sort of connected. You have another valve down here, is connected with the adjusters, because this reservoir kind of controls what goes in and out on the shock, and also the pressure. The softer that you get it, the valves sort of open up, and the tighter that you get it, they kind of close, so they need more pressure for fluid to go through those bypasses pretty much. Yeah, so different styles of adjusters, different styles of remote reservoirs. Like I said, you know, Dobinsons offers 3: compression and rebound, high speed and low speed. Fox offers low speed and high speed. King offers only compression because they already figured out on the valving, you know, they adjusted the shims. Icon also only offers compression, but they have their electronic shock, so pretty much you have a lot of ranges on adjustability. And Bilstein, the most affordable one for $700, you get what you get, you know, but it's also a nice reliable shock.
So just going back to the whole remote reservoir thing that Hugo's talking about here, I just want to bring up, you said a little bit about heat.
Yes.
So when you're going, let's say like Baja racing, right? The shock is constantly rebounding.
Correct.
So that builds up a lot of heat. And with the external reservoir and that nitrogen, what it does, it helps dissipate heat.
Correct.
So it does cool down a lot more than just something without an external reservoir.
That is correct, exactly. But not like super fast, but it does help a lot.
Right.
It helps a lot more. And the reason why these shocks take way longer to overheat is because you have a ton of fluid.
Right.
Yeah, you have a lot of fluid.
So you have, like, let's say 30% more with an external reservoir.
Correct.
Compared to something without external reservoirs, all your fluid is just in the body here.
That is correct. Yeah, in most cases, like the 6112, this is your shock body. You have all of these full of fluid, and then you have about 30% of nitrogen. So the nitrogen takes away some of the fluid capacity. So.
And as far as, like we were saying, King and Fox are head to head here. Fox is a little bit more expensive, and after hearing what you said, I think the only reason why it's a little bit more expensive is the dual adjustment.
The dual adjustability.
Even though King has it set up to where you only need to use the one.
The compression, correct, yeah.
But as far as, you know, the question that everybody has is, why should I get Fox over Kings, or why should I get Kings over Fox? What do you think?
That is a really tough question. So I usually would recommend, if you know people that are running these setups, jump in their vehicle. If they trust you, you know, why not go for a spin on their vehicles, go for a ride, and see which one you like the best, because these two ride almost identical.
That's exactly what I think. We have a lot of shop trucks here, and at one point one of them was running Kings, the other was running Fox, and you know, I drive them both fairly often, and if you ask me if I could feel the difference, definitely not.
Yeah.
And another thing I wanted to bring up too is a lot of people ask, do I ever use the adjustment here? Do I actually use it? Do I get out and adjust it when I get to the trailhead? And then when I get down from the trail, do I adjust it back to street driving? Me personally, no, just because with the Fox and King setup, the way they are out of the box, they just drive very amazing on-road and off-road already. You have to be someone that's really particular with the ride, and you can feel the ride difference to be able to get out and do your minor adjustments and stuff and actually feel the difference. As for me, if it's between Fox and Kings, there's no way for me to tell the difference. I guess I'm just not that picky.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just recently replaced my shocks for Kings with adjusters. Again, you know, you've seen my 4Runner, it's super heavy. The adjusters came in handy for me because, you know, it's my daily driver. I go off-roading to different types of terrain, washboards. I do some technical stuff here in Colorado. Not that crazy, but that's when I actually play with the adjusters. So for me, it comes in handy because I'm super heavy and I want the best ride quality there is. So I got Kings with adjusters. Yeah.
Right. So coming from something that's not Fox or King and then upgrading to a Fox or King, you can definitely tell the difference. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So for me, on our second gen Tacoma, we actually had the 6112 front and 5160 setup, and we never went off-roading in that second gen. So for a daily driving truck with the 6112 setup, it was absolutely phenomenal. It was amazing, comfortable ride. It took all the potholes and dips and stuff like a champ. I can't say the same for, let's say, if you did a 5100 setup on a truck. If you went from a stock suspension and then you just upgraded to a 5100 setup, I honestly don't recommend that because it's not really much an upgrade, right? Like, are you really paying that much just to go like a tiny little bit of a lift, but not really any sort of ride quality performance upgrade?
Yeah, the Bilstein 5100s, they are, on the previous video I mentioned that those are just the very basic entry-level factory replacement shock.
Factory replacement
factory replacement shocks. That is right. They just allow you to gain a little bit of lift if you want to increase your tire size 1 or 2 sizes up, but that's all it is. It's just a light-duty factory replacement shock.
So for me, if you're one of those people that say, hey, I just want a suspension that's just going to give me a little bit of lift, I don't want to do anything crazy, I would still definitely recommend the 6112 setup here. You're paying not a lot more. These are very, very affordable for giving you a 2.5-inch lift.
Oh yeah, and for what you get.
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
for what you get,
affordable.
This, for me, I always tell everybody that comes in here that tells me they just want like suspension lift, nothing too crazy, I skip the 5100 setup. I don't even tell them about that. I don't recommend that to anybody. I just tell them straight to the 6112 setup, and you know, that way they're not coming back and be like, oh, these ride terrible, they're so uncomfortable. Well, it's because, you know, they're a factory replacement, and this is the bang for your buck suspension here. You're gonna get the performance, you're gonna get the comfortable ride, and the lift that you're asking for. So that's probably the best mid-level.
I want to say like mid-tier, like nice
suspension,
a little bit above entry level. Yeah.
And especially if you don't want to pay for one of these guys over here. This is
the way to go.
$3,000, $4,000.
Full kit, depending for Runner or Tacoma, you'll be looking somewhere between $2,500, $3,000
compared to.
Oh yeah, no, these ones start without adjusters. These guys start at like $1,900. That is $700.
Yeah, so half
the price.
Half the price, but very capable of doing what these guys are doing. So that brings me to the next subject here. Here in Colorado, specifically Colorado, for the trails that we have, is it necessary to get something crazy like Fox and Kings or even long travel in Colorado?
Oh, good question. I will say that all depends on how heavy is your ride food on the gas pedal or how crazy you want to get on the trails. But
do we even have a long enough stretch to be going that speed here?
Not really. In Colorado, we're more like crawling,
exactly.
slow pace, slow speed, crawling. We do have a lot of shelf roads. So long travel here in Colorado is not really necessary. I mean, unless if you're going to gain a few more inches of articulation, but most of the trails here in Colorado are not really required.
Not necessary,
not necessarily. The 6112s will be capable of doing probably 85% of the trails in Colorado.
I agree.
Of course, unless if you go to the 2 or 3 like Holy Cross and stuff, those ones you need 40s, triple locked and all that stuff. But other than that, if you're looking for a nice budget above entry level, 6112s. A little bit above that, I will go with Dobinsons. Like I said, Icon, they have kits from $2,000 all the way to Let's Get Crazy. King and Fox will be your top shelf recommendations. So, but again, you know, your driving manners are the ones going to dictate what's the right shocks, the right suspension for your specific needs.
Yeah, and we're talking about pricing here and how good this is for your money. It's crazy because I would probably say 80% of our customers here in Colorado opt to go for Kings and Fox, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is correct.
Why? I'm not sure. Probably because everybody else here in Colorado is rocking Kings or Fox.
Mm-hmm.
They are very, very good suspension. So, you know, if you have the money, there's no reason not to go with the setups that we have over here.
Right.
But as far as mid-tier level, these are also very capable.
Yeah. Another thing, going back to the rebuilding situation, my guess is everybody goes with King or Fox because access to these parts when you need to rebuild them, it's much easier than getting Dobinsons or any other brand. Icon also is pretty good because all of these three manufacturers are USA. You know, Bilstein has a manufacturer in the United States, but they're a German company. So, and they are just massive. So I will stay with these three, made in USA. Access to rebuild parts, it's much easier, you know, and usually they're really good at keeping them in stock. And these three big brands, you know, here in Colorado, we got Filthy Motorsports, we got 303 Shock Services that they can rebuild the shocks. So, yeah, I mean, I will stay with these three. Also think ahead. Whenever you need to rebuild your shocks, you need to make sure those parts are always available, at least fast, you know.
Yeah, so as far as rebuilding, you don't want to keep your truck at a shop for however long it takes to get the parts. So you want to have those readily available to get them rebuilt right away. Also, when you're paying for something that's up in this level here, you kind of want to look at the rebuilding way rather than buying a new setup because it's so expensive, right?
Exactly.
Now, if you're getting something a little bit less expensive but also rebuildable, is it really worth it to buy? Let's just, for example, if you buy a $300 shock and it's rebuildable and it costs you $200 to rebuild it, would you pay $200 to rebuild it or just pay an extra $100 and get brand new shocks?
I will get a fresh shock and we'll buy another $300 one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when it comes to rebuilding, just see how much it costs and, you know, compare to what setup you have already.
Correct.
Of course, if you have the more expensive one, rebuilding is the way to go.
It's worth it because like what we said earlier, you can always play with the valving. You know, you can talk to the guy that is rebuilding the shock and, hey, you know what, make the rebound softer or more firmer, the compression, whatever you need, whatever you like for your specific needs. And yeah, I think we got most of it.
Yeah, I think that covers it for the mid-tier suspension. And if you guys have any questions at all, please leave a comment below and Hugo and I will try to answer them to the best of our knowledge. But that is it for this video.
Yeah, and don't forget to give us a call, 303-909-6047.
All right, peace.